And good evening. This is Lance Hoppus talking to you with the God Family Country Show right here on 930 AM The Answer.com. That .com is very important to you so that you can find this program's podcast every single week. And by the way, do us a favor. When you're listening to this show, write this down. I'm going to give it to you again. It's 930 AM The Answer. That's the radio station. Add a .com to that, and you get to go online, look at the podcast, and look up the God Family Country Show. When you find the God Family Country Show, you're going to see that all of our programs are archived. This evening, we have a super guest coming on for you, and guess what? Oh, golly, guess what? Roy White's back. He's sitting right here on my right-hand side.
As a warning? Is that kind of like you got to inoculate yourself?
No, we've missed you.
Okay.
So glad that you're back. And Roy White, by the way, is working on a program that's very dear to his heart. He's the guy that started it. It's called Truth in Textbooks. If you want to know more about that, go to truthinTextbooks.com. What their program is it's a plan that he's put together with a lot of people's help in it, and it's all volunteers, but it's to go through the textbooks before they're published and make sure that the information in them is correct. Not politically correct, but correct. Correct historically, correct according to politics, what should be the right answer, okay, and information. So he has a very big plan on that. He'll explain that to you more, I'm sure, in just a little bit. Also, and oh, by the way, you find that in truthinTextbooks.com. And Roy also has another program, G416Patriots.com. Take a look at that one. There's a good website I'd like for you to go to. It's UTT, Understanding the Threat, by John Guandola. And along with that, there's another good website to go to, which is theclarionproject.org. The purpose for this radio show is real simple. It's to edify God in His only begotten Son, Jesus Christ. Then it's to have a better understanding of what our families, you, me, my wife, my children, my grandchildren, my mother and my father who are no longer with us, but everybody in our family, what our role is in this nation as Americans. Okay? It's very important to understand that. We try to get a definition of that as we go through this 2 hours, just through the topics that we're going to bring to you. God, family, and country. That's what it's all about. Okay? Because I have a sincere belief in my heart, and most people who come on this radio show have the same feeling that I have, that it's that the United States is a nation of God, created by God, for His missions, to be shot back out around the world again. That was the purpose and is the purpose of this nation. And remember, the United States is the only nation in the world that has God's name chiseled into the stonework of its federal buildings, of its national buildings, on our money. We're the only nation in the world that does that. You know, it's like that guy asked Jesus one time, he said, Jesus, he said, do I have to pay my tax to this guy? Meaning Caesar. And Jesus looked at him, he asked him, he said, well, you know, do you have a coin? Do you have any money? You know, do you have any money? And he said, yeah. He said, let me see it. And he pulled out a coin out of his pocket, and Caesar's image was on that coin. And he said, you pay unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and that coin is Caesar's. Well, I challenge you. Reach down in your pocket, pull out some folding money, any kind of bill that you want to pull out, or some change, some of that hard money. Whose name is on it? God's name. God's name in we trust. Okay? So, Roy, let's get started. I can go on about this for, 2 hours.
2 hours. It's your 2 hours, and we're thankful.
I can take 2 hours just talking about this.
Well,
I do want you to know that there is absolutely no funding coming to this program. I fund this program through everything that God gives me, and I am blessed through all the blessings that God bestows upon me. So
all of us here in the Hill Country are blessed by that also, and it's a little bit about how we are to be paying it forward. And Lance, I'm blessed to have met you, and
we have to keep it moving, right?
That's right, we do. We need to keep it moving, and one of the ways that we do that is through our project with Truth in Textbooks, as you talked about. We are reviewing social studies textbooks. We're wrapping up what we did out in California, reviewed 25 social studies textbooks. We'll be putting that out on our website.
That's awesome.
At truthintextbooks.com. We appeared before the State Board of Education out there, and we've also had putting out press releases and other information, sending people to the reviews, thousands of pages, over 10,000 pages of textbook material we reviewed by our volunteers, probably close to 2,000 errors that we found in these books. Many of them dealing not necessarily just with Islam or Christianity or Judaism, but with our founding fathers, about the Hindu religion, about many other facets, Bill of Rights, lots of other information that our children are being falsely led, and particularly in California, because they're one of the largest states in the country that other states follow in terms of textbooks. So schools in Nebraska, Iowa will oftentimes adopt those same textbooks. So by us identifying those errors in the textbooks, we're encouraging the publishers to put the correct books out and the correct information out. So they want to get more information, they want to be a volunteer or learn more, they can write to us at tnt.textbooks@gmail.com or go to our website at truthintextbooks.com and learn more about how to do that. But part of that fake news, that information that's not being accurately told, is a topic that we're going to talk about today, because we're not talking about one of the most powerful tools that we as Christians have and we in the West have, and that's the power of the Holy Spirit that's leading Muslims to Christ at a phenomenal rate. And one of the I think, from everything I've read, one of the top experts in the world, and the only one that I know of that's written a recent publication on the topic, and that's Dr. Duane Alexander Miller, and we want to welcome him to the show from Madrid, Spain today. Dr. Miller, welcome aboard. Glad to have you. Well, I want to highlight first of all the book that we're talking about. It's Living Among the Breakage, Contextual Theology, Making and Ex-Muslims Christians. And so what we're going to be talking about today is your work and you sharing with the listeners here in the Hill Country about what you're seeing about Muslims coming to Christ around the world in this exhaustive study, and then what you're doing in Spain and Denmark and all over Europe and what you're seeing, because we don't get a lot of perspectives about what's going on in Europe with the refugee crisis and other issues, except through the lens of a media that's very slanted, anti-Christian, anti-Western theology, and I think that's going to be important. So we'll start off a little bit just to tell us a little bit about yourself. I've got your bio here, but tell us what you think the listeners need to know about your background that will help them understand why what your perspective is based upon some really great, I think, academic credentials. There you go. Go. Right. Right. And yep. Absolutely. And one of the threads that brings you back that we're connected by is our mutual good friend, Dr. Mark Pfeiffer, who's been a host on this show many times. You also sit on the board of the Christian Institute of Islamic Studies, and people can learn more about that at tciis.org. Dr. Mark Pfeiffer's group, you've helped him immensely spreading the word that Mark is out there and his lovely bride, Suzanne, going out around the world and here in the United States, teaching Christians on how to witness to Muslims and how to engage with them. So I applaud you for sitting on that board and helping them also. In your book, Living Among the Breakage, you really, one of the things you make it very clear that the Islamic community is not monolithic. We have a tendency to kind of group Muslims either in Shia or Sunni fashion. What are the things that our listeners can take away, how to break the mold of thinking that all Muslims are the same, and from our perspective, because that's our media kind of gives us that impression. What are your takeaways, and what are the things that you would share with our listeners to help them break that mold? Right. 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 Exactly. One of the things I want to stop real quick, let people, if they want to follow you in your blog, which I would highly recommend, give everyone your blog address right now so they can understand how to follow you and the work you're doing. And I really highly recommend I've been fascinating since we first got introduced a couple of weeks ago of reading all of the material that's on there. A great source and a very unfiltered source of information about helping us understanding Muslims, the Muslim community, how we as Christians can interact with them. So I highly recommend that. In tackling the issue of trying to compile all of this information that you put into your book, Living Among the Breakage, you in your book have for the first time documented the conversions of Muslims to Christians. And this is, in your perspective, this is a fairly recent phenomenon of how this tsunami of Muslims are coming to Christ. Because there have been movements in the past, but over the last 20 or 30 years, that movement has really begun to accelerate. Talk us through what that's been like in your research and where you went for that information and some of the conclusions you have that you can share with the readers. Right. Good. And ironically enough, a lot of these events that were kind of seismic that started these were all events that most people would say, oh, these are horrible things to happen, because what happened in Indonesia, if I'm not mistaken, there was an overthrow of the government that led many Muslims, and many people were killed out of this persecution. But out of that has come this growth in Indonesia. The same thing in '79 in Iran, where you had the overthrow of the Shah and mass killings and others. So even out of these tragedies, God has found a way to reach people. Is that a fair assessment? Uh, well, exactly. And I just think it's, we will get him on, because we're always looking for people to continue this theme that we're in this spiritual battle between Islam and Christianity. And for a lot of Christians, they're really not aware of that. We're speaking today with Dr. Duane Miller, expert on those Muslims who are converting to Christianity, and a book that he has written that is really phenomenal, Living Among the Breakage, Contextual Theology, Making and Ex-Muslim Christians, and understanding what that really involved. And you tackling this challenge of trying to document, there's not exactly an encyclopedia that you can go and begin to document where Muslims are converting. You worked with another expert in this area that had been doing this for some time, but brought their research together. Talk a little bit about that project and how that all began, and what some of the things. Obviously, it's now been 2 years since you've done this study. What changes, what assumptions were proven to be true, and which ones that you would say, hey, we probably some of that may not be completely accurate. Share with us your other sources and how you use them. Right. Yeah. Right, exactly. And there's a great series of reviews and other critiques of of Dr. Miller's work, and in looking at those, I found very few, and these are not usually people who are very gentle with their reviews. I mean, but repeatedly as I looked through the reviewers' comments, Lance, it struck me as how really blown away these reviewers were. Says we've never seen anything like this. I want to find some critiques for it, but they were oftentimes without words because it's such new information that there really wasn't any way to I guess disagree with it, or a basis to disagree with it.
Well, information like what?
Well, in terms of just the level of detail, nobody had, as you talked about, Dr. Miller, nobody had really kind of promoted this Operation World information. He had never published it. So these experts were now being made aware of the information for the first time, and thanks to Dr. Miller's work, they were really, and everyone I'm sure has said, well, when are you going to put out the next edition? Who else is working on this? So I'm sure that's really been right. Right. Absolutely, and we're going to delve more into your experiences there in Europe, because I want our listeners to kind of hear firsthand experience about what you're seeing in Europe, because a lot of folks have written off Europe as being a country, or a part of the world that has lost faith. As you said, so few people attend there in Spain, and that's not very different than church in a lot of countries over there. But we're going to talk about your experiences. But we're speaking with Dr. Duane Miller, who is author and expert on discussing and really exposing and informing everyone about the number of Muslims who are converting to Christianity, and the hope that more will continue to do this, and we'll end up having that discussion more in the bottom of the hour. Lance, give everybody, our listeners, how they can find this podcast or share this information again with everyone.
And I want to thank you, Doctor. You're not going to go away. You're going to be right here for the next half of the hour.
Right.
And so if you find that listening to Dr. Miller has caught you and captivated, don't go away, because we're getting ready to get deep into what he's doing when we come back in the second half of this hour. This is 930 AM The Answer. When you want to know how you can share this, or how you can even listen to it later, you want to rewind it, go backwards, look at it, listen to it in your spare time, you go to 930amtheanswer.com, look for the God Family Country Show, and that's where you'll find this program. It'll be archived on there, along with all the rest of our shows that have been archived. We're getting ready to go to a break for 2 minutes for a news break, and we're going to be right back. When we do, we're going to come back with Roy White and Dr. Miller, and I have some questions for the doctor when we come back. So God bless you. Stick with us. We're going to be right here.
Okay, Duane, we're going to just, if you need to take a potty break or a water break, and then we'll crank back up here whenever you're ready, my friend. Okay, let me know when you're ready to go, and we'll and thanks. Good stuff.
Roy?
Yeah.
And Doctor, would it be too much to ask that we get into the 10 factors of conversion to Christ for a Muslim?
Good. Then we'll start right at the top of that, and get.
I think that looking at that would give the listener and everybody involved a good idea of what it is that really
works.
creates that conversion. Yeah.
Absolutely, then we'll get into that discussion. Okay. I will. Yeah, well, media exposure to other ways of life, thought and religion, contextualized or cultural sensitive witnesses, living abroad, migration prayers, dreams, visions, miracles, great number of missionaries, translation of the Bible, materials, greater diversity in missionary strategic forms, and greater boldness in evangelization. So I'll bring up some of those, and we can expand on some of this. Okay? All right. Thank you. Shemai, you ready? Okay, Lance.
And we're back. This is the God Family Country Show right here on 930 AM, The Answer. You want to know what you can do to help your family learn more about God, more about the position of the United States in facing various problems that are coming at us as an onslaught. Where's the biggest problems coming from that we're seeing in the United States right now? The world of Islam. It's coming from the world of Islam. Does that mean that Muslims are bad, that Muslims are horrific, that Muslims are someone that we should turn and run from? No. No, absolutely not. That isn't what it means. It means that there's an ideology out there that needs to be faced, confronted, and dealt with that really has nothing to do with what most Muslims believe or even think that they're believing in. So we're going to break this down a little bit. And that's what we always try to do on this show. We try to reach for clarity. You know, there's another guy on the radio he's a real radio guy. He's on Salem Communications in the daytime, Dennis Prager. I love that man. And he says continually, you know, we can disagree, you can argue with me, it doesn't make any difference as long as we have clarity. That's all that's important, as long as we have clarity. So we're going to reach out for some clarity in the rest of the 30 minutes we have for this show, and we're going to be talking to Roy White again and Dr. Miller, and we're going to get down to 10 specific things, aren't we, Roy?
That's right. And in Dr. Duane Miller's book that we have, Living Among the Breakage, Contextual Theology, Making an Ex-Muslims Christians, one of the areas that you talk about, Dr. Miller, is there are factors, Keith, in polling former Muslims, Christian, you call them CMB, Christians from a Muslim background, but these CMBs, these individuals, these new Christians come in, and they point to several areas that really are keys in helping them come. And we've had Dr. David Wood, who's been a Christian, who is a Christian apologist, here speak, and I know you know David. He has used his lane of social media and others to come through, and media is one area, but what are some of the other areas that Muslims identify for you or to you that are keys in having them come and leave Islam, which is a tremendous challenge, and finally make the step over to become Christians? Right. Right. Yeah, well, in your book, you reference on page 224, quote, I do not recall a single instance of any Christians from a Muslim background ever telling me they had learned anything about ethics or God from Muhammad. So that really emphasizes that last point that you made, that it is oftentimes the witness. And one of the areas that I've been told, and I think you confirmed in your notes, is that being around Christians for the first time and seeing Christians behave in a way that Muslims are not expecting them to, because they're expecting Christians to behave in a way that they've been taught. So was that one of the areas, and did that manifest itself in any particular examples that Muslims may have shared, or former Muslims shared with you? Right. Right, and it's so true. And the power of prayer, and we underestimate it so much. And the people, it's interesting because as in my walk in this journey, the more and more I come across Muslims or former Muslims, or I just had the pleasure of meeting a Coptic Christian the other day who has now introduced me to the bishop here in southeastern United States, and I'm going to attend my first Coptic Christian liturgy here in the coming week. So this has all come about, I believe, through prayer and exposure of God walking me through this journey and introducing me to folks like Mark Pfeiffer. And again, you can learn more about Mark's website, his work at tciis.org. Go there and learn about what Christians can do to understand Islam and therefore become better witnesses for Christ to Muslims. I think one of the other areas that, and you're seeing that here in Europe, and our big concerns as we look across the ocean, a lot of folks have written off Europe in terms of Christianity and certainly in terms of the refugees. And one of the areas, top 10 areas, is the fact that a greater number of folks who have immigrated or living abroad, now they're being exposed to Christians. Talk about what you're seeing on the ground in Europe. You've just made a recent trip to Denmark, and give us what's happening there in Spain with growth and any growth in the Muslims converting to Christianity, and certainly what you experienced firsthand up there in Denmark on a recent visit. Sure. And these were 95% Muslims, correct? Mostly Muslims that were coming? Well, that's awesome. I think that's the kind of encouraging word we don't get oftentimes. And I know Mark's work there, Susan, when they went to Jordan, they went to some refugee camps there, and there are young Jordanian Christian pastors who are finding that in these refugee camps, they're finding many Muslims who are now exposed to folks like Mark and other religious groups who are going into the refugee camps and helping directly. And again, here people sit listening to this radio show, well, I'm not going to Jordan, I'm not going to Denmark, but there are Muslims in our community that are here. We have a Muslim community that's estimated here alone of 40,000 Muslims that have immigrated or have been here in America for quite some time. But Muslims who come up, who are former Muslims who become Christians, their view of Christianity is probably a little different than mine, growing up in a Baptist church my whole life and coming to Christ. Is there a way to kind of summarize how their view of Christianity is very different than, and I know generalizations are a little dangerous, but is there some sort of common thing that you find among the former Muslims that are gathering, worshiping, that are different than a normal church you might walk into, Dr. Miller? Yes, there you go. Right. 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 Is it their objection to that because they feel like punishment, that they don't view God as punishing? I guess I'm at a loss to try to drill down a little bit more and define what that objection is.
Yeah, what would be the difference between the Christian God and the God of Islam in this instance, where they have difficulty? What would be the difference? Okay.
Right. So that really takes a more mature Christian, and I'm not trying to be condescending with this, but that's just more meat than they can digest at the time. I think the love message, I've heard that from so many folks, that is such a diametrically opposed view from Allah to the God of Yahweh, that they can deal with. But this other, defining difference that we as Christians, I would strongly support that theology, that yes, there is a level of punishment. I'm sure you probably would too, but that they're not ready to perceive that or accept that. They're not. Their digestive system is not able to comprehend that or handle that. Is that a fair assessment? Right. Right. Exactly. Right. 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 So, and I think that's important. Yeah. Uh-huh. Right. Yeah, excellent things that I think because we think, oh, everybody's got an ulterior motive. If recently they came out and announced that, hey, Prince Harry is going to get engaged to a American actress, and everybody, oh, the only reason why she's doing that is he's the prince, so that's why. So I think oftentimes we as Christians need to enter a relationship for the sake of just a relationship, and let the Holy Spirit take it where it's going to go. Because there are many times where that relationship may not result, and we may not be around when the Holy Spirit acts on that. And that happens many times where that Muslim, when you separate from that relationship, they're still a believing Muslim. It's not till years later that something may click, something else, and you don't just enter into a relationship just to, well, if it's not going to work out, he's not going to convert, then I'm going to go to my next one and drop that relationship. So I think that's, because that does send a message to all their other Muslim friends and Christian friends too. Oh, you were just in it to try to convert, and when that turned in, yeah, I can see where that would be a detriment. I think also one of the things that hurts former Muslims, Christians from a Muslim background, CMBs as you mentioned, is this whole interfaith dialogue that's going on. When they see other Christian clergy stand up and say we all worship the same God, is that not just one of the most confusing things and works against the very essence of what we're trying to do, and that's to preach the truth about our God versus their God? Do you see that in some of your discussions? Right. Right. Right.
Real quick, Doctor, what do you think is the biggest cause of the influx of Muslims into the West? Why are they moving why are so many moving into the West? If you have a quick answer on that and easy.
Very,
Uh-huh.
very true. And in the last, and this, right. Right. Yeah, that's the irony. Well, Dr. Miller, we want to say thank you, and we want you to be back on a regular basis. We wish you and your family happy holidays, Merry Christmas there, and what the work you're doing. We want people to go to your website or your blog, duanemiller.wordpress.com. You can Google up Duane Miller, Dr. Duane Miller, and WordPress. You'll find that on Google, and go to his website, get more, find out about the great book that he's written that is out there on Amazon. We want you to come back. Living Among the Breakage is the name of that book. Lance, thanks for having us, and Dr. Miller, thanks for coming on.
Thank you, and God bless you, Doctor. You have a good, what time is it in Madrid? Then have a good evening. God bless you and good night.
And we'll be back. Thank you.